Contemporaneous legal discourse is often paralyzed with substantive arguments that both oppose and favor a particular question of law from seemingly equally merited standpoints. Illegality is a podcast that delves into often conflicting but equally incontrovertible aspects of legal discussion and provides listeners the opportunity to know all schools of thought governing legal issues. From the Journal and Seminar Committee of Department of Law, University of Calcutta, and co-hosted by Atru Chakraborty and Somrita Sen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Illegality, the weekly podcast of the Journal and Seminar Committee of the Department of Law, University of Calcutta, co hosted by Somrita Sen and I, Atreya Chakraborty, where we delve into the merits of conflicting arguments in legal discourse. In doing with our alternate episode hosting system, in today's episode, Committee General members Swati Banerjee and Zishanuz Zaman discuss the dimensions of the constitutional right to education in an age of pandemics. It is reminded to all listeners that any and all opinion given over the course of this episode are solely our own. The situation of education in India has been a cause of concern for ages. Economic disparity has always acted as a major impediment towards its spread. The present crisis has revealed such barriers more prominently as more and more children are not being able to access their right to education. The speakers attempt to trail the Indian journey towards making of education as a fundamental right and the challenges the government is facing during the trying times of the present crisis.
We start with quoting the words of Mr. Nelson Mandela: "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." As we all know that the world has presently come to a standstill due to the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, which has never before been identified in humans. COVID-19 has brought about an era of incessant lockdowns across all nations owing to its highly contagious and incurable nature. By the second week of March, nearly 120 countries had declared the closure of all its schools and colleges to ensure social distancing in order to prevent the proliferation of the virus. Education has always been the ladder and medium through which a country could hope to attain social development and economic prosperity. An educated population is the biggest resource a country could have. Throughout centuries, education systems have undergone innumerable transformations so as to enrich its efficaciousness to the masses. Investment in human capital, particularly medicine and education, has emerged as the foremost priority for state governments across the world. According to the latest statistics released by UNESCO, around 1.3 billion students around the world have not been able to attend school or university as of 23rd March 2020. Although to prevent further transmission, the closure of educational institutions is the only viable option at hand for the administrative authorities, but at the same time, prolonged periods of closure have already begun to result in adverse consequences. Accordingly, various international agencies have brought up the issue of current impediments in the field of education to the fore. In times of crisis, schools play a vital role. They ensure mental stability among children and help them to cope with the mental pressure created by such alarming circumstances. The comfortable routine of attending classes and submitting assignments create a sense of normalcy. Thus emerges the digital platform as the only effective avenue for imparting of education. However, this has also revealed the inherent steep economic gaps which countries worldwide have not been able to permeate. Economic disparity has emerged as a major factor and barrier in the achievement of an uninterrupted equal distribution of knowledge. In a country like India, where previously education has had been the luxury of a few and which has gradually and steadily sought to improve such situation and further its success to all, the present scenario pushes such progress back. Identifying the academic infrastructure and the abysmal economic scenario of the country, it shouldn't be too difficult for one to conjecture how the lockdown would affect the current academic setup. On 24th March 2020, a nationwide lockdown was imposed in India to contain the impending outspread of the life-threatening coronavirus. This resulted in the complete closure of all educational institutions across the country and also indefinitely postponed the examinations that were due to be held. Such drastic but indispensable measures have crippled the entire sector of academics. Education in the country has always been a persistent cause of concern and a harbinger of criticism for the government. The untimely pause in the academic field is bound to draw huge ramifications in the future career of millions of students. Most of the countries have ushered in necessary measures so that the academic community can resort to online resources. Such a mechanism is the only feasible available alternative. However, the Indian government, both at the central and at the state level, has proven to be less than stellar in its effective addressal of the issue. The lackadaisical attitude of the educational infrastructure in the country has clearly revealed that it is not at all ready to cope with such a massive paradigm shift.
For delving into the intricacies of the present situation, it is pertinent to briefly expound on the various consequential laws that have been time and again enacted by the Parliament and their subsequent judicial interpretations. Discerning the significance of education, the framers of the Constitution had strongly emphasized on its role in the shaping of individuals into responsible citizens. To substantiate the above claim, we may refer to the case of Mohini Jain vs. State of Karnataka, where the Honorable Justice Kuldeep Singh alluded to the constitutional provisions of Article 21, 38, 41 and 45 and subsequently asserted that, quote unquote, it is no doubt correct that right to education as such has not been guaranteed as a fundamental right under Part 3 of the Constitution, but reading the above quoted provisions cumulatively, it becomes clear that the framers of the Constitution made it obligatory for the state to provide education for its citizens. Article 45 was incorporated within the directive principles of state policy with the cardinal objective to pave way for free and compulsory education till the age of 14. This article ensured the constitutional commitment towards the goal of imparting education by overcoming the barriers of social and economic inequality. Now, as we all know, that under the Constitution of India, the legislative sections have been divided into three lists, namely Union List, State List, and Concurrent List. It was the 42nd Amendment Act 1976 that transferred education from the State List to the Concurrent List. Based on the Kothari Commission report, the then Prime Minister of India, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, had announced the first national policy on education in the year 1968. However, the aforementioned policy was heavily censured by some states, especially from South India, following which, during the period of national emergency, Ms. Indira Gandhi implemented the 42nd Amendment Act 1976, by which education was incorporated into the concurrent list. Such a move was done to ensure the unhindered hold of the central government regarding the framing of policies on educational matters. Since then, there have been multiple deliberations through which the Supreme Court of India has profoundly interpreted the correlated constitutional provisions and has harped upon its efficacious implementation. In the case of Mohini Jain vs. State of Karnataka, the Apex Court had held that the right to education is concomitant to fundamental rights enshrined under Part 3 of the Constitution, and that every citizen has a right to education under the Constitution. Justice Kuldeep Singh had further iterated that, quote unquote, the right to education flows directly from right to life. The right to life under Article 21 and the dignity of an individual cannot be assured unless it is accompanied by the right to education. The state government is under an obligation to make an endeavor to provide educational facilities at all levels to its citizens. The year 1992 saw the eventuation of another landmark judgment that critically analyzed the aspect of the right to education, which till date holds force as a judicial precedent. In the matter of Unni Krishnan vs. State of Andhra Pradesh, the Apex Court had expounded upon the significance of Article 45 in Part 4 and deliberated that the above said article should be read in harmonious construction with Article 21. It was held that, quote unquote, if life is so interpreted as to bring within it the right to education, it has to be interpreted in the light of directive principles. Harmonious interpretation of the fundamental rights vis-a-vis the directive principles must be adopted. Following which, the court delved into the interpretation of Article 41 and held that the right to education could further be enforced beyond the age of 14 by closely considering the economic capacity and development in the respective states. It was held by Justice Pandian and Justice Reddy that, quote unquote, in order to treat a right as a fundamental right, it is not necessary that it should be expressly stated as one in Part 3 of the Constitution. The provisions of Part 3 and 4 are supplementary and complementary to each other, and that fundamental rights are but a means to achieve the goal indicated in Part 4 and must be construed in the light of the directive principles. It is quite conspicuous that even after decades of independence, the deficient budgetary allocation in the educational sector has failed to improvise the sloppy infrastructure. Recently, a survey was conducted by an organization named QS Vangoj concerning the current educational scenario in the country, and accordingly a report was prepared. The report quoted as such, quote unquote, the survey pointed out that the infrastructure in terms of technology in India has not achieved a state of quality so as to ensure sound delivery of online classes to students across the country. It is seen that both the state and the private players have not yet managed to overcome technical challenges, for instance, in providing adequate power supply and ensuring effective connectivity as the data reveals. The aforementioned report, which surveyed 7,600 respondents, has found that nearly 72.6% of the students use mobile hotspots, and among them, a huge bulk faces poor to no connectivity. Under such circumstances, even online classes do not seem a plausible alternative, as the telecom operators have not been able to address the poor connectivity issues. It is not at all feasible for the entire student community to rely upon such a method without a proper resolution to the network hindrances. The apathetic statistics clearly reveal the dereliction of duty on part of the governments and their overt failure in conceptualizing the judicial opinions. Notwithstanding the innumerable policies and administrative campaigns, it is apparent that the current logistical scenario is incompatible to the basic requisites and is antithetical to scholastic achievements. The 86th Constitutional Amendment Act 2002 is of paramount importance as it engendered the incorporation of Article 21A in the Constitution of India. The cardinal objective of the said provision was to ensure free and compulsory education for children between the age of 6 and 14. The said article, however, was intertwined with an unwarranted clause which said, quote unquote, as the state may by law determine. This gives a wide ambit of power to the state governments in the implementation of such constitutional provision, and it was strongly argued that such a precondition to a fundamental right was unprecedented, and it vitiated the very relief that was brought in by the Unnikrishnan judgment. Notwithstanding multiple parliamentary debates, all the political parties of varying ideologies came to a consensus and made certain that the bill was smoothly passed. Consequently, India became one of the 135 countries to introduce education within the scope of fundamental rights. The right of children to free and compulsory education, 2009, is one of the most consequential laws to have ever been enacted, envisioning the legislative intentions behind the incorporation of Article 21A. A close perusal of the very title of the enactment portrays the absolute obligation on the part of the state to ensure admission, attendance, and completion of elementary education of children between the age of 6 and 14 without charging any fee. Thus, it is a constitutional duty on both the central and the state government to undertake all requisite mechanisms in consonance to the concerned law to prevent any child from being deprived of their fundamental right to basic education. The monitoring and implementation of the RTE Act is the duty of the Child Rights Commission of each state, which comes under the Women and Child Development Department. The Act also puts a legal imperative on the government-aided institutions to secure reservations based on the proportion of the funds that they receive, 25% being the minimum. From a critical analysis of the said legislation and the associated DPSPs, it is well perceived that the lawmakers have acknowledged how the lagging economic conditions have constantly impeded the process of securing quality education. Despite persistent agitations, the concerned authorities have failed to address the issue of fee hike, which has recently been the root cause of dissension in the academic fraternity. Even key institutes such as IITs and IIMs, which are internationally eminent for nurturing the creme de la creme, have witnessed the intermittent outbreak of protest. However, it is saddening to observe that certain educational institutions have incremented the fee even during the current moment of global distress. To bring in a sense of relief, the governments of several states such as Gujarat, West Bengal have urged the academic institutes to refrain from charging any fee during the period of lockdown. Nevertheless, it is really disturbing to observe that certain private schools have denied access to online classes to those students who haven't been able to pay their fee. Such abominable decisions by certain school authorities have exposed the bitter reality as to how some education institutions have turned the virtuous cause of imparting education into that of business and profit making. It is absolutely antithetical to the noble visions of the founding fathers of the Indian Constitution.
Now we discuss about the adaptation of educational alternatives in times of COVID-19 and its subsequent issues with special emphasis on right to equality. Marelza Oliveira, director of the UNESCO Beijing office, has said the response of China's education system to the COVID-19 emergency is remarkable in terms of depth of the remote learning facilities being made available and of the scale required to cover such needs. Education can be correlated with the crisis through three phases: prevention of crisis, during the crisis, post-crisis. First came the decision of closure of schools. In case of pandemics such as COVID-19, to prevent community transmission and to save the younger generation, schools and other educational institutes become the primary sector to be closed down. The onus of teaching the younger minds falls on the families of such students and for the older ones themselves. In India, the fact that for quite a staggering number of families, their children are the first generation students reverberates. For those pursuing higher education and who are economically deficient, their dependence on the libraries of their respective institutes also plays a vital role. The closure of institutes deprives the students of their instruments of learning. Second, the institutes look for feasible alternative methods of teaching during the ongoing crisis. Originally, the lockdown was supposed to be over in a matter of days. It did not, forcing the authorities who are in charge of education to make sure that an academic year of the student is not put to waste. The fact that we are living in the digital age has emerged as the apparent savior. Online classes held by different schools have been decided as a new method. UNESCO has recommended a comprehensive list of distance learning solutions which primarily includes educational applications, platforms, and resources that would provide parents and teachers with a potent way to enhance student learning and would further ensure social care and interaction during the present period of school closure. In consonance to such international guidelines, the Union HRD Ministry on 20th March 2020 shared various digital e-learning platforms that will be accessible to the public free of cost. The most important being the Diksha, a podium that includes educational content created by more than 250 teachers across the nation. The app provides academic lessons and study materials in different languages, and its most significant facet is its easy accessibility even in offline mode. Another important e-learning app is ePathshala by NCERT, which provides books, videos, and audio clips in English as well as in various regional languages. The National Repository of Open Educational Resources is a portal that houses a massive collection of educational resources which is of great utility not only to the students but also to the teachers. It includes various interactive modules which have been designed in a user-friendly manner so as to garner the attention of the student community. According to data collected by the National Sample Survey as a part of the Survey on Education 2014, in India, among households with at least one member of age 14 years and above, only 27% had internet access. The proportions were 16% among rural households and 49% among urban households. Besides that, among persons of ages 14 to 29 years, only 18% in rural areas were able to operate a computer device. Even in the present digital era, where the world boasts of its scientific advancements, the majority of the Indian citizens are still engulfed within the sphere of digital ignorance. In the landmark case of State of Tamil Nadu and others versus K. Shyam Sundar and others, it was held that there has been a campaign that right to education under Article 21A of the Constitution be read in conformity with Article 14 and 15 of the Constitution, and there must be no discrimination in the quality of education. The right of a child should not be restricted only to free and compulsory education, but should be extended to have quality education without any discrimination on the grounds of its economic, social, and cultural background. The court had quite intricately construed the correlation between Article 21A and the provisions dealing with equality. Reference was made to the case of Brown versus Board of Education, where the US Supreme Court had held that separate education facilities are inherently unequal and thus violate the doctrine of equality. Today, we find that several articles are being published across the newspapers and over the internet, portraying the glaring inequalities among the array of opportunities for learning and educational support. Economically disadvantaged students suffer the adverse consequences of these disparities more than the affluent ones, since they are not endowed with alternatives. Further, in another consequential judgment, the Indian Supreme Court had lambasted the gross inequalities that overtly exist in matters of educational opportunity and academic infrastructure. In the case of Dr. Pradeep Jain and others versus Union of India and others, it was held that the primary imperative of Article 14 is equal opportunity for all across the nation for education and advancement. A close perusal of the relevant statistics reveals the laxity of the administration in adhering to the guidelines and orders of the court. As per the aforementioned report, there exists a massive disproportion with respect to digital access between the urban and rural population. Surveying all the states and union territories, it was found that only 6% of the rural households and 29% of the urban households possessed a computer. Such low access is a big worry, as 55% of children, as per average statistics studying in universities, are from rural households. States like Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Uttar Pradesh had stooping figures when it came to persons who were able to operate a computer or some other electronic device with internet accessibility. Combining rural and urban areas, only 3.9% of households in Chhattisgarh had computer setups against a national average of 13.7%. The aforementioned statistics showcase the huge administrative black hole and how the authorities are failing to effectuate the aspects of online classes in India. However, the staggering figures regarding internet accessibility questions the credibility of the government in ensuring adequate resources to the student community in the present age of technological modernity. Referring to the case of Unni Krishnan versus State of Andhra Pradesh, the Apex Court had laid down that while allocating the available resources, due regard should be had to the wise words of the founding fathers in Article 45 and 46. Though the importance and significance of higher education cannot be denied, but there should be a proper balancing of the various sectors of education. Finally, a question arises as to the capability of the government to breach the educational barrier already created during the crisis in the post-crisis era. Hopefully, the country will see an end to the crisis without too many casualties. However, world history of various pandemics has suggested otherwise. Considering the relative economic difficulties that would arise with the end of the pandemic, the government must devise a method to combat such future issues. The students who have not been able to access classes, or those institutes who have not been able to afford the engagement of students through such classes, should not be deprived in a manner that would harm their future professional aspects. As for primary education, it should become one of the foremost responsibilities of the government to make sure that the other liabilities of the post-crisis era should in no way hamper the spread and inculcation of the importance of such education among the masses. Each child should have education access, and it becomes the responsibility of the government to ensure that smaller students overcome the impediment caused to them because of the crisis and wield their right to receive such education that would assert them equal to their more affluent counterparts.
In the consequential Unnikrishnan judgment, the Apex Court had asserted that, quote unquote, a true democracy is one where education is universal, where people understand what is good for them and the nation and know how to govern themselves. Article 45, 46 and 41 are designed to achieve the said goals among others. It is in the light of these articles that the content and parameters of the right to education have to be determined. At least now the state should honor the command of Article 45. It was made a reality. It is noteworthy that the relevant laws have bound not only the government but also the parents and society at large. Article 51, Clause A, Subclause K of the Indian Constitution has imposed a corresponding duty upon the parents to ensure the education of their wards until the age of 14. However, such a constitutional obligation has hardly yielded any positive result due to the profuse amount of ignorance and the lackadaisical attitude of the Indian mass. Thereby, going along the lines of the constitutional provisions and to promote universal education, the Government of India had launched the midday meal scheme in the year 1995. The above said scheme turned out to be more efficacious than the incorporation of a constitutional duty, as the poverty-stricken families started to send their wards to school regularly. It has undoubtedly been one of the most efficacious schemes, having showcased a wide ambit of utility. Battling against classroom hunger, it has increased school enrollment and, most importantly, has paved the way for a free healthy meal for the children belonging to economically weaker backgrounds. However, the present closure of schools have solely affected these children who were strongly dependent on these government-provided meals. Among poor families, the additional cost of a single meal, that too during a time of distress, has terrible financial implications. Although the government has assured the unhindered continual of midday meal services, Several news reports have displayed a picture in contrast. Political strife between the central and the state governments have often affected the discharge of these essential services. Even during such moments of global distress, government services have failed to break the shackles of corruption. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the Supreme Court has taken suo motu cognizance of the non-availability of midday meals to the children due to the ongoing lockdown. The bench headed by Chief Justice of India, Justice A.C. Bobde, issued notices to all the state governments and union territories, thereby inquiring as to how the children were being provided midday meals during the current shutdown. In Kerala, the Anganwadis have taken the onus to deliver midday meals to the underprivileged children at their homes. Such a noble initiative must be undertaken by all the respective state governments to ensure that the poor children are not deprived of their basic source of nutrition. Furthermore, on 26th of January 2020, the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy, launched a Jagananna Amma Vodi scheme that will provide a financial assistance of Rs 15,000 to those mothers who send their wards to school, irrespective of it being a government or private institution. Besides that, throughout the country there are several scholarship schemes such as KVPY, National Merit Cum Means Scholarship, Prime Minister's Research Fellowship, which periodically provide economic aid to the needy and meritorious students. In certain cases, the students support their family with the amount that they receive as stipends. However, the current lockdown has sorely affected the functioning of several governmental departments, which has resulted into a lamentable state as the students are not able to avail such governmental benefits.
Moving on to the governmental efforts and suggestions which have proven to be quite inadequate in comparison to the enormity of the situation. On 6th April 2020, the University Grants Commission of India had constituted a committee to deliberate and make recommendations on the issues related to examination and academic calendar of the present year under the chairmanship of Professor R.C. Kuhar, the present Vice Chancellor of the Central University of Haryana. The committee interacted with various concerned authorities such as the vice chancellors of various central, state and deemed universities, principals of colleges and teachers. Numerous aspects related to the educational structures were intricately deliberated upon. Not only the present situation but also the post-lockdown scenario was taken into consideration and all correlated facets were exclusively discussed. Paramount importance was given to the academic future of the students so as to negate or at the best minimize the repercussion of the present closure. The existing modes of the teaching learning process and the subsequent ways of conducting examinations were talked about. The necessity of ameliorating the present infrastructure was strongly emphasized to effectuate easy access to online resources. The reshuffling of the academic calendar was another pertinent matter to be discussed, especially considering the students who were supposed to graduate in this session. Consequently, the committee presented an integrated set of recommendations to balance the academic loss. The universities have been urged to develop a foolproof plan in order to maintain the norm of social distancing and to ensure the adherence of all requisite precautions. The concerned authorities have been asked to reschedule the upcoming semesters and the subsequent examination following the given guidelines. It is noteworthy that the committee has emphatically stressed the indispensable role of the existing academic structure and the exigency of its immediate improvisation. The present situation demands a complete reappraisal of the policies and priorities of the Indian government. It should be one of the primary liabilities of any government that a well-placed method of overcoming a crisis, including natural hazards such as the ongoing pandemic, should be in place. The methods to conquer should not only include medical facilities, economic commitments, but also such ways which would keep the educational facilities functional in times of crisis. Education enables people to reach their full potential and exercise their other basic rights. Interruption or limitation in between academic sessions lead to students dropping out of courses or schools with an enduring harmful effect on the societal and economic condition of the country. However, the adequacy of the Indian education system, even in ordinary times, is lacking at best. The fact that it is not equipped to deal with a situation like the present time doesn't come as a surprise. The disaster management policies of the country only concentrates on sectors like the health, economy and industry. Education of the country has always taken a back seat. India could do well to rectify the situation, taking inspiration from the policies of other affluent countries. The present situation has led to the bending of the conventional rules regarding education in almost all parts of the world. Exams have been suspended, schools have closed, remote learning has been encouraged as the only method to impart education. Access to free internet service should be made available, and the present ambit of it has to be expanded in order to be able to satisfy a greater body of students. As in the US, our country needs to set aside a specific funding for its educational pursuits and to promote equal educational facilities to all sections of the society. It is also palpable that due to the inevitable impending economic breakdown, the government needs to ascertain that education remains not only accessible but also affordable even to the poorer sections of the society. Conversely, it must also be kept in mind that facilities for those students who suffer from some form of disability should not be left behind. As in the case of certain states of the US who have refrained from providing distance learning, deeming themselves to be fair to those students with disabilities and desisted from providing the rest with an inequitable advantage. This sentiment, however admirable, formulates a greater problem in the future rather than solving the current one. The effort should be to make sure that everyone gets included and uplifted, and not to push an entire population down.
In conclusion, a popular political saying comes to mind. It says that, quote unquote, never lose the opportunity of a crisis. Everything that happens has a reason behind it, and every happening illustrates a unique lesson for all. The present scenario is a clear manifestation of the stark disparities that exist in the sector of education, and thereby serves as an eye-opener not only for the government but also for the society at large. The glaring reality reveals how the entire framework requires a redesigning. The enormous disadvantage brought about by the gross inequalities and their staggering statistics is nothing new to us. The current crisis has simply focused the spotlight on these problems which had been residing for decades in the society without any acknowledgement. It is only education that can sanitize the rot in the entire system, as Nobel laureate Amartya Sen had quite rightly quoted that education is the backbone of India. Further, it must also be remembered that the bearing of the pandemic on the individuals, families, and communities at the micro level of society would be colossal. People will fall sick, resulting in them not being able to work and would hence lose income. Their savings would be exhausted on medicine, care, and treatment. Death of people such as specialized workers, skilled artisans, and educated officials would become irreparable losses, ensuing distress on the work environment. Closure of businesses and smooth functioning of factories, which will in turn affect the economic condition of an already weak country. In such a situation, it would be the duty of the government to ascertain that everyone rises from the impending difficulties in an equally efficient manner. Before concluding, it would be highly appreciable if we could just take a pause and recall the answer given by Mr. Paul Reville, former Secretary of Education for Massachusetts, when asked about the methods to bring back normalcy after this period of crisis. He said, and I quote, "In this situation, we don't simply want to frantically struggle to restore the status quo, because the status quo wasn't operating at an effective level, and certainly wasn't serving all of our children fairly."
Before we conclude, we would like to thank all members of the committee who have helped and supported us through this venture. If you enjoyed listening to our podcast, consider following us on twitter.com/CULawJSC and on Facebook at www.facebook.com/CULawJSC. The full transcript of this episode of the podcast can be accessed at its official Medium page at www.medium.com/il-legality-podcast. Thank you everybody, and please stay tuned for details in our next episode.